There's been a bit on in the rural sector this week, from Winston Peters laying into Fonterra over the sale of their consumer brands, to farmers feeling the pinch after New Zealand Post sliced their services down to 3 times a week. Well, at least given the lever to pull for New Zealand Post. Sarah Perriam-Lampp is with us from Countrywide Media, the Chief Executive there. Sarah, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Great to see you.
It's a pleasure to be in here.
Let's start with Fonterra. We had Winston on earlier, but we were talking about Gaza, so we didn't quite get into the Fonterra thing. But I mean, this is Winston's territory. You know, Nationalist Party wants to hold on to Kiwi assets.
Yes, but isn't it perfect electioneering? And Winston knows this. He's come straight out the gate. It's a year to go. And what's the political football going to be for next year? Cost of living, right? So he's heading right into that constituent in terms of being able to say, hey, look, there is sentiment out there, no doubt, that this is not favoured by all. But with regards to, the regulatory hurdles of the OAA, and then also the farmer shareholder vote comes first at the end of October. Fonterra has come back and said, hang on a minute, Winston, you're a little bit out of line here. He's looking for a distraction in the media as well, and he's getting that ball rolling before anyone else on the election campaign.
It's up to farmers. I mean, this is the thing. They're the shareholders, they're the owners, the co-op owners. They will decide, and most of them are on board with it, aren't they?
They are, but I mean, at the end of the day, no one knows until the 11th hour. But I mean, Miles Harrell and Peter McBride have got pretty wide smiles at the moment on the road, so they should be fairly confident. And I mean, it's the economic flow-on effect that, of course, New Zealand will not feel right now and may not feel for some time, but is going to come with $3.2 billion returned to farmers with this deal going through. He's valid, and there's a lot of examples of this 10-year agreement for supply, and what happens if Lactalis decide, no, they don't want to take New Zealand milk anymore. Sure, that's a risk, but the proportion of Fonterra milk we're talking about is small. Majority of Fonterra's milk goes into its ingredients business, and the economic return on capital of the ingredients business is so low in comparison to the majority of its milk, so it just actually makes business sense. So, I mean, yeah, good on Winston for using it as a platform.
Hey, you were at the Wood Processors Conference in Wellington this week. What was the talk of the town?
It's actually genuinely one of my favourite conferences because there's a lot of innovation happening in the wood sector. And one of the great things is Wayne Mulligan, who's an entrepreneur, has come into the space alongside the likes of Ian Taylor with New Zealand Forestry. And they've gone into bed with the Taiwanese company to be able to actually look at New Zealand's forestry stand and say, hang on a minute, this is actually a feedstock for biochemicals for potentially for diesel and also plastic alternatives, and we're actually sitting on a real opportunity. On the numbers, which is really interesting, we export logs so cheap right now, $50 to $150 a tonne, versus what Wayne's talking is $3,000 a tonne. So it's wasted opportunity sending all these cheap logs to China when we could keep it here and fix our energy crisis, for example. So I love those conferences for that sort of environment of innovation to push growers and processors out of their comfort zone to think bigger, and Wayne certainly did that.
And one of the things that I've always been told about, turning them into biofuels is the economic cost of getting them out of the hills and then processing them and all this kind of stuff. But there's actually huge opportunity.
Well, it's happening anyway. Yeah. We're already cutting them down when they come to their economic life of 30 years, but we're just deciding to send them to China for the cheapest possible price. So, I mean, there's a huge opportunity for us to be self-sufficient. We've just got to get more coordinated and collaborate, but we just are so in silos in this whole country. So.
Hey, couple of things government-wise. The police kind of backed away from in Canterbury, their reduction of services for rural communities, which is good.
Yeah.
But then we've had New Zealand Post, which is kind of like a wee whack in the guts, isn't it?
Oh, New Zealand Post is a whack in my guts constantly, as now a publisher of magazines into rural New Zealand with Life and Leisure and Countrywide. And I tell you what, going from this environment into the publishing world, I've learned a lot about Post. And if I could talk with the New Zealand Post CEO, there would be some words. But the thing is that there's so many things that we don't think about what we call our last mile of services. an example to me, you lose your EFTPOS card. It takes 2 to 3 weeks for your EFTPOS card replacement now to get in the mail because of the reduction of services. And for us, we've seen 150 to 200% increase in our costs as a publisher over the last 5 years. But, we go to Grey Power and we think it's the, old hick up the road that doesn't have the internet. It's actually rural New Zealand services really highly rely on that, and they say, oh, get on the internet. Well, 67% still say they've got dodgy or patchy coverage at best. So it's an interesting debate, but the thing is, the writing's on the wall. They want to be a courier company. And surprisingly, the competitors are moving in. The government just needs to make sure that the competitors in the space do not find regulatory barriers because of the fact that they need to replace what New Zealand Post fundamentally doesn't want to do, which is envelopes and magazines.
Some city folk would say, well, you live far away from lots of people, you won't have the same access to services that others will have.
Yes, they will say that, but whether or not that is the right thing in terms of the environment that we operate in as one family, as a country, whether that's right or wrong. I know New Zealand Post needs to turn a profit, just like TVNZ does, and that makes sense. But at the same time, there needs to be replacements and no barriers to those replacements. And that's the thing I want to make sure and keep a close eye on, that you can't just take away services without allowing for competitors who can actually do it for a cheaper price.
Yeah, what barriers are you talking about?
Oh, there's logistical barriers, there's lots of different agreements and all sorts of things. But don't worry, it's had a lot of fun being in the background pushing buttons, right?